Alright, here we are with the much requested update on my 65-gallon reef aquarium. So I hadn't really intended on continuing with the videos after my 3-part build series, but I've had quite a lot of interest, more than I was expecting, and I'd say every few days I get requested by a subscriber or by a viewer to shoot an update. So I finally had a chance to do that, and here you have it. So we're 12 and a half months into this now. That's 12 and a half months since I first added the saltwater and started cycling the system. And as you can see, things have come along pretty nicely. There's been a lot of additions since the last video. The last video, of course, was the 3rd part in my 3-part build series, and that was about 6 or 7 months ago. So we'll quickly walk through an update on what I've added, and then I'll mention a couple of the changes I made to the equipment and just some suggestions for people that are considering starting their own project, or maybe people that already have their own reef aquarium that are looking to make some changes or improvements. Alright, so right away you can see that fox-face rabbitfish swimming around there. Nice thing about that, guy, is you can put those fish in a 3-foot tank, which is what I've got here. Not a lot of the big fish can go in a 3-foot tank without stressing them out, and that guy's not an open water swimmer, so he's good in here. He's doing quite well, growing nicely. And you can see I still have the 2 green-blue chromis, as well as a couple of clownfish. You can see one swimming in the back there, and that spotted cardinal still hangs out by his Kenya tree. So I haven't lost any fish, and I've got a cleaner shrimp hiding out in here someplace as well. So that's a really good sign. I'll quickly walk through the corals. At the top here there's a rock that's half covered with these pulsing zinnias. And you know, I bought this coral as a little frag. It was about the size of a nickel when I introduced it to the tank, and it has just exploded in about 4 months since I got it, to the point where I've got to keep an eye on it to make sure it doesn't root itself in any of my other live rock, because I don't want it to take over the tank, and they have a tendency to do that. Got a couple of SPS, a few SPS pieces over here, the Montes and the branch in the front. You can see the nice white tips if those are coming through on the camera. There you go. So that tells me those are doing pretty well. That piece is doing well, and you can see the green one, polyps are wide open, so he's happy. And the Kenya tree has grown nicely since the last video. Here's my favorite piece. This is metallic or neon candy cane. I bought this as a small colony. It had 11 heads when I got it, and they're much smaller than this, and you can see there 2 of the heads on the right are just about finished splitting, and I've got 3 or 4 of the other heads that are just starting to split. So I'm really happy with that piece. It's coming along nicely. My toadstool, you can see he's shedding, so hasn't been open for the last couple of days, not much to see there. Got this nice little bunch of zoas that I'm patiently waiting to encrust that rock. Over here I've got the same thing going on with this favia. It's growing really nicely. You can't even see the frag puck anymore, and I'm waiting for that to encrust that rock as well. My mushrooms are just growing like mad. These were introduced to the system as one mushroom. It's split about 6 times, so I've got 7 or 8 little guys growing around there now. And I've got a torch, and again this guy's doing really well. You can see the little tentacles growing from the bottom, so he's happy. I feed him about once a week with a couple of the other corals. I feed him along with this elephant ear, which you can see is grown about, well, almost doubled since the last video. And then also my brain coral. This is one of my favorite pieces as well. You can see the coloration on it is fantastic with the bright green and the neon green there and the bright orange. So I feed those 3 guys about once a week with pieces of shrimp. Just in the back here I'll point out the yumas, a little small rock there with 4 yumas, 3 really small guys and a nice larger one in the front. And the last piece is this orange blasto. This guy doesn't come through very well on the camera, but he has a really nice green eye. You can see the tentacles are out. He's pretty happy as well. So that's what the tank looks like 12 months later. And you know, I'm really happy with the way things have turned out. Don't plan on making many more changes in the future. I'm just going to now you know, do my regular maintenance and sit back and enjoy it. You can see the 2 Evo pumps are still there, as well as the skimmer bar. No changes to that. Been working really well, happy with the circulation. There's a couple of small changes in the sump, so I'm just going to head down there now, but before I do, I'm going to switch the camera over to a different light setting, and I want to mention that if you're taking pictures of your coral or fish and they're turning out really purple or bluish, it's likely because of your white balance. So what you can do on your camera, most point and shoot cameras allow you to go in and customize the white balance. So if you do that, you'll end up having the picture turn out more like this. Not exactly how it looks in real life. Some of the colors come through, you know, the bright greens look kind of whitish, but for the most part this looks a lot better than just the auto feature on the camera. It looks a lot closer to what it actually looks like to the naked eye. So I'm going to switch it over now and talk about the sump. So this is the auto setting on the camera, and you can see how purple everything looks, and it completely washes out the fluorescence from the coral. So if you're taking pictures or video, keep the white balance in mind, play around with the setting, and you can get them to turn out a lot better than the auto setting on the camera. However, when I come down here to the sump, you can see under this fluorescent light, the auto setting works great, so that's why I've switched to it. Now I just want to talk briefly about what I've done with the skimmer. First off, you can see the skimmer's working great. It's pulling out all sorts of junk from my tank. I like that about it. The one issue I've had is down here where the air and water mix at the intake to the pump. Now that air line used to go up to the little air intake box where I can control the airflow, and that was sitting right here under the neck of the skimmer. What I've done is I've extended the air line by a couple of feet. If I just come around to the back of the aquarium, you can see I've mounted it. I've zip tied it onto one of my drain lines. And that was to get it out of that salty environment. What was happening is I had salt crystals forming in that little intake area. It's that little black piece. I'd get salt deposits forming in there, and they block the airflow. So every 7 to 10 days I had to take it apart, wash out the intake and get rid of all the salt. When I moved it to the back of the aquarium, I still have this issue, but I'd only have to clean it about once every 3 weeks before it causes me any grief. And this isn't too uncommon with any protein skimmer intake. I had the same thing on past skimmers. So you just play around with them to see what works. If you can, a fresh air intake for your skimmer is even better if you can get it completely away from the aquarium. But even if you just get it out of the sump area, that's a lot better. Now if I come over to the refugium, see a couple of changes right away. I've taken the diffuser cover off just because that was causing me a lot of grief when I wanted to get into the sump, and I cut it into gates on the sides of the baffles, so still serves its purpose of keeping the snails and crabs out of the other compartments. I've also added a much deeper sand bed. It's about 5 inches deep. That was based on a recommendation from a YouTube viewer, so I appreciate that. I did some research into it and hoping that's going to help me out long term with the denitrification. And right away you'll notice the caulerpa that I used to have in here is gone, and I just have that little ball of chaeto. Now I did that because the caulerpa had pretty well grown over the entire refugium, and it was rooting itself in the sand and in the rock. It was out of control, and it was kind of a pain. So I pulled it all out, and now I'm just going with chaeto, and I literally just put that in a week ago or so. So it grows pretty quickly. I imagine it will fill up this side of the refugium in a matter of weeks. No real changes on my return compartment. You can see I still have the ATO auto top off switches, the float switches there, still the heater, return pump, and my pH probe. And no changes to the Digital Aquatics Reef Keeper light setup with the SL1 and my 2 PC4 modules. Alright, so there you have it. That's 12 months in to the 65-gallon reef aquarium project. You know, if I was to change anything, if I was going to start again today, the only big difference I would make would be to mount the sump outside of the cabinet. So just in general, having the sump in the cabinet, although it's convenient because it's close and it's right under the display tank, that's nice, but it's really difficult to work in there and do any changes or modifications or even cleaning. So I'm really wishing I had mounted the sump on the other side of the wall and just left the cabinet empty for fish food and whatnot underneath. So if I do another tank build, that's definitely the approach I'll take. That way you have full access to the sump, and that's really the only really big lesson that I've learned in this project. But even still, it's manageable with it underneath, and most people still put it under in the cabinet anyway, just because it's nice and convenient. So that's it, 12 months in. If I make any more major updates or if people are curious as to what's going on, I'll post another update in the future. But for now, I hope you've enjoyed it, and good luck with your own reef aquarium project.